In this episode, we're going to be talking about growing your podcast audience in 2024, sharing some actionable tips, and answering some of the questions that I found online in forums, in my groups, and from some of my listeners. Tune in.
This is the Podcast in the Rough. Tune in every Friday for new adventurous episodes.
All right, welcome back to another exciting episode of the Podcast on the Rough. I'm your host, Zebulon Thomas. This is episode 137. And today I've got an incredible topic to dive into. It's the ever-evolving world of podcasting. As the landscape continues to shift, it's essential for us to stay on top of the latest trends, strategies, and tools. So I have prepared this episode to add massive value to you, and I want to dive right in right now. In this segment, I want to go over exploring the current state of podcasting. What are the latest trends and how the industry has changed since our last episode? I pulled some key questions and I wanted to provide some feedback from what others have been asking. Question 1, how has the podcasting landscape evolved in the past year? I'm going to say advertising. From my research and studying all the different areas of podcasting, podcast advertising is a topic that is raising both excitement and concern. There are signs that it might be following a trajectory similar to what we've witnessed on YouTube, and I hope that's not the case. But if not handled with care, the platform could face an inundation that, in my opinion, might compromise its integrity. Podcast advertising has outgrown the confines of traditional host-read ads. Advertisers are now exploring dynamic ad insertions and branded content. This is going to open the doors for more creative and tailored advertising strategies. However, podcasters will need to tread carefully to ensure a balanced and engaging podcasting experience for our audience as we unfold in this ever-evolving advertising landscape. And it's so important to do this because if we let the advertisers do what they did on YouTube and we just let this wash it, it's really going to destroy the integrity of podcasting. And I'm kind of worried about it. But advertisers are going to be met with some fierce force. They're going to run against a wall when they run into podcasters because I feel that podcast content creators are much different than YouTube content creators, social media content creators. We speak differently. We think differently. We are hobbyists. We are passionate about this, and we are not really concerned about advertisements. And even though we do need the money to support our podcast, we have found other avenues for many, many years before advertisers have come into this space. And from my opinion, we are not going to budge and let them water us down or control our tongue, per se. Hopefully I'm right about that. We'll see. Personalization is also picking up speed this year. A fascinating development in the past year, personalized recommendations have taken center stage. Podcast apps are now harnessing the power of AI algorithms to deliver tailored suggestions. By delving into your listener history and preferences, these platforms curate content uniquely suited for your individual tastes. This means that discovering new shows you'll love has never been more seamless. The podcasting experience is becoming increasingly personalized thanks to this new advertisement in AI technology, and I personally embrace this part of AI technology. I'm not happy about a lot of the AI stuff. Plus, it's fairly new and we don't know what it is, but at the same time, this is something that I feel is going to be good, and I wanted to bring that up because from my research, I've realized that with having an AI algorithm is going to be a lot different because it's really going to favor the listener's experience. That means if you're doing a good job and you're following what you want to do and your heart and your passions on podcasting and you have a good topic and you're creating a good experience, then that algorithm is going to recommend you and it's going to be less of a pay-to-play, really cutting out the pay-to-play. And I think on the podcast platforms, we can't have a pay-to-play. It has to be different. Otherwise, it's going to go south real quick. Ad revenue. There is a surging tide of ad revenue within the podcast sphere. The podcast advertising market is witnessing a remarkable growth, and research has showed a net-worthy milestone with a global spending exceeding the 1 billion mark, solidifying podcasting as an even more appealing platform for advertisers seeking to forge connections with highly engaged audiences. The growing ad revenue underscores the increasing influence and potential of podcasts as a formidable advertising channel. However, this raises some concerns and crucial responsibility for both advertisers and creators. And I've said this before, but striking the right balance between advertisers and content quality is paramount to keeping listeners engaged and loyal. As we navigate this shift, I encourage all of you to continuously maintain a seamless and enjoyable podcast experience for our audiences and let that remain our top priority as hosts and producers. Don't let the advertisers control our tongue and put too many hands in the pot of our podcast episodes. Don't let them dictate the show. We've created the platform. They want to have something on it. They want to have a little piece of this pie. They got to play by our rules. Stick to that. In other words, don't sell out. You got this. Stay in it. There's plenty of other ways to make money, and I've talked about that with your podcast in previous episodes. So make sure you check that out. All right, listen, quality surge. There is a creative and quality surge within podcasting in 2024 already, and I'm loving it. This enhances the listener's experience in exciting new ways. Elevated production values are on the rise, increasing investment in podcast productions by the podcast creators. More of you are spending more money on your podcast to make it better, and that is exciting. That is an investment that I stand true to, and I know that it's worth the investment. And when you do this, this will translate into higher audio quality. And for the listeners, this quality is immersive soundscapes and captivating storytelling. So brace yourself for podcasts that match and even surpass the production excellence of traditional radio. And I love radio, but finally podcasting is vastly growing. And with this quality shift, it really is going to blow past radio in a whole new way. So this is going to cause radio at some point to have to step up their game, which is also going to be exciting because then they're going to figure out something new and it's going to keep slingshotting back and forth and become really exciting for the listeners. So this is going to start creating an unparalleled audio experience for our listeners. And I hope that I have been at the forefront of this because I've always pushed with quality. And if you've been with me long enough and you've been a dedicated subscriber, you've seen my quality increase over the years and over each episode, and I'm obsessed with giving you an experience on this show. So hopefully I've done a good job. Now let's move on to question 2. Are there new emerging platforms or trends we should be aware of? Yes, real-time interaction. I've talked about this a lot. Live podcasting is taking center stage, and it allows you to engage in real-time interactions with listeners, creating a sense of intimacy and proximity. When you podcast in real time, the show's trajectory can be influenced and steered by the questions and comments pouring in from the audience. And this is going to add an extra layer of spontaneity to the listener's experience. And we see this all the time if you go to TikTok. We see this every day, all day on TikTok Lives. And I've been talking about this live real-time podcasting for a while now, and I just feel that it's something that we should all just start to test out this year. And don't be afraid of it. I know I'm like, I want to go live, but how, right? Well, really, it's this simple. I'm looking at like, okay, I want to go live. How do I plug this into, a TikTok and Instagram and make it where the quality is all there? And I do know how to set that up. But maybe I'm overcomplicating things. And since it's something we're going to be testing out, let's fail forward. Let's not worry about the quality at this point. Let's just get on the platform first and try it out. Go live. See what that feels like. You might love it. And once you feel this out, now you can say, okay, now we're going to increase the quality. And that's going to actually, in my opinion, when people tune in and they see you live for the first time, they're just going to be excited that you're live and this is a live podcast. They're going to want to get involved. But then as you start to season in better audio quality and visual quality, it's really just going to dial them in even more and get them more excited and create that experience for them. So then you're going to have raving fans. Definitely test out this year doing a live podcast. All right, now question 3. What are the challenges and opportunities podcasters are facing in 2024? Man, that's a good question. We're well into the year here, and all I can say is this, that you should be podcasting. You should be talking about what speaks true to your heart, passion, purpose, and then run the ball with that all the way to the finish line. With every episode, I encourage you to work on improving your quality and how you are as a host. Really study and figure out how you can get better at this. Then focus on creating an experience. If you can create an experience, you're really going to captivate the audience. It's really going to give them that immersion they need and that push to subscribe and to become a raving fan and a diehard listener. We really want that. That's the community. I always talk about community. That's the community. And if you don't start podcasting in 2024, I can promise you this, you're going to regret it. You're going to miss out on a lot of opportunities that this vehicle could create for you. You have nothing to lose by starting to podcast. And listen, if you're talking about, I don't have the money, Zebulon, I don't have the equipment, I don't have the tools, I don't have the resources, you do. And that's going to getting into my podcast community mastermind. It's all there. I have free tools for you. Stick around this episode because I'm going to throw out my advertisement on how you get into my podcast community mastermind if you haven't done so already. I'm here to help. My community's here to help. And there's endless amount of resources online besides me that will point you in the direction you need to go for podcasting. I've just created this podcast and my podcast community mastermind group as a way to save you money and avoid the pitfalls and get excited about doing a podcast launch. Now let's dive into strategies for growing your podcast audience. I'll be sharing some actionable tips as well as answering some of the key questions I found online in the forums and the groups that I'm involved in. Here's a question that I found that I wanted to address. What are the most effective ways to promote a podcast in 2024? Okay, so I'm just riffing on this. I'm not on script. This is me answering this question, and I want to answer it truthfully. It kind of goes back to what I've been saying this whole time. If you really want to promote your podcast and get it out there, you have to think about how would you want to be marketed to? And it's not going to come in the form of a hard ad or a hard sell. It has to come in the form of an experience. You have to drive that in. You have to make this noise over here, right? Go over here and make a noise. Like you're walking down the street and it's quiet and all of a sudden there's a party down the street and you're like, what is going on, right? You've heard the noise. You're in your house or something like, what is all this bass? And you peek out and there's like, what is going on down the street? And you get a little frustrated, right? And you just start snooping around and start walking down the street and you're like, what is going on? And then imagine you walk up this party and like it's so much fun happening and you see into the backyard, you see into the windows, people are spilling out on the front lawn and it's just so much fun. There's music and like games. You're going to feel like you're not going to want to turn around unless you turn into a Karen, right? But you're not going to do that. You're going to go back and go, man, I feel like I'm missing out. And you're going to want to run back to the house, be like, hey, knock on the door, like, can I party with you guys? Like, what do I need to bring? You're going to go get some chips, right? Some salsa or something. You're going to show up. And you're going to be like, hey, I'm here at the party. You're going to blend in just because you want to be a part of that experience. So I say this as if you want to promote your podcast effectively, you need to be on your top 3 platforms. Don't saturate it. Don't wear yourself down and water yourself down by going on every platform out there. Do test and experiment with where you're going to get the most traction. Your audience might be on TikTok. They might be on Instagram. They might be on Facebook. They're definitely going to be on YouTube. So I would say number 1, at least have YouTube, have your podcast platform and YouTube. Creating an experience. Constantly just do this. Stick to a schedule. Stick to what's true to your heart and true to your podcast experience and what you want to talk about. And go there. Run that ball. And then focus on how you're going to nurture that community that comes in. Next question. How can podcasters leverage social media to expand their reach? This kind of goes with the first question, but here's what I'm going to say to this. Here's how you're going to leverage social media to expand your reach. You're going to use Instagram to promote your YouTube channel. You're going to use YouTube to promote your Instagram. You're going to use YouTube and Instagram to promote your Facebook group. I highly recommend a Facebook group because that's where you're building community. But you're going to use it to tailor them into wherever your community is at. And you might just have that community on YouTube, and that's fine. A YouTube community is amazing. And I've said this before. I'll say it again. If you have a solid YouTube community, don't even try to move them off the platform onto Facebook. Don't even try to do that. Just keep them in YouTube, nurture that, stay consistent in the comments, and just be a part of your own community. Contribute, okay? It really is just finding out which platform is the hottest platform that speaks true to your audience. Where can you dive into the craziness, the oversaturated crowd of people and still stand out or cut through the clutter? If you have strategies in place to cut through the clutter and the chaos, you'll be fine on virtually any platform. But if you don't have those strategies in place and you don't know what you're doing and you're trying to fail forward, I highly recommend just going to where the platform holds the most of your audience, where you can seek value and that you can get involved in other people doing the same thing or similar thing to you. So like if I was trying to grow really big on Facebook, I would definitely get involved in more Facebook groups that talk about podcasting and how to help people. And I would give my advice in the comments without telling people about my podcast. And in exchange, if I do enough due diligence there and I add enough value, people are going to start to notice that and they might click on my profile. And when they click on my profile, now I'm ready. Because in my profile, I've optimized the crap out of it. I have my About Me all together. I have my links. I have my banner saying, hey, check out the Podcast in the Rough. It's all right there in their face. Big billboard. It's my billboard. They've entered my world now. And when they look at my feeds, they're going to see that I've been constantly posting, if not more value than what I've been adding in the group with my podcast episodes. And I'm like, what is this? And now I've turned that person into a listener, a subscriber, and hopefully part of my community. Question 2. Are there any unique strategies for podcasters to stand out in the crowded market? Yes, comedy is trending high. It's way up there, if not at the very top. Probably the most viewed and listened to, it's comedy. Now listen, let me just say this. So for all my comedy friends out there and listeners, ramp up your comedy on podcast. Go for it. Optimize the crap out of that. Look up how you can optimize your comedy platform in podcast. Now listen, for all those listening, it doesn't mean you're going to go become a comedian overnight. Maybe the comedian comes out of you. I mean, I'm kind of funny, but I am spontaneously funny. It means I can't just be funny on cue. But what I'm saying is, how do you take advantage of that trend? I wouldn't even call it a trend, really. I don't want to call that a trend. I really look at comedy as something that the reason we're flocking to it, because we all need a laugh, and especially when the world is down and out like this, and things are upside down, and everything's confusing, and social media is bogging us down, and there's a lot of, mental health is an all-time rise. Comedy is an outlet for us. We gotta laugh. Laughter is healing. Laughter is fun. Laughter is love. We want to laugh. I really value my comedian friends. I really do. I just want to say that right now. I thank all of you. You know who you are. I thank you. You're special. You're a very special piece to our society, to our world, and into my personal life, to my life. I appreciate you. Our comedians we need to protect them. We need to protect our comedians because they're really doing a lot of work that you don't even know about. Right. And just getting it out there is like, it's like the last part of what they do. Like there's a whole big mountain they've already moved at that point. And the come down is like, hey, I want to put this out there now. You know what I'm saying? So we got to support our comedians. But yeah, comedy is on the rise. And how can you apply that if you're not a comedian? Well, you could just make your podcast more exciting. More, I would say, make it lighter. Find ways to have more laughter in your podcast is what I'm saying. We all love a good laugh, and when watching people laugh, we want to know what that's like. That party down the street, we want to be a part of that. So laughter's big. So find a way to lighten your podcast and give the experience, and find ways to implement some form of elevated experience, euphoric experience, something that makes people smile. And then if you can spill that over to a laugh, do that.
Okay, once again, if you would like to join me inside the Podcast Community Mastermind Facebook group, it is absolutely free. All you have to do is go to thepodcastintherough.com/learn. That is thepodcastintherough.com/learn, and get inside the group and learn how to podcast from start to success. If you'd like to support this podcast, buy me a coffee by heading over to buymeacoffee.com/in-the-rough and become part of the adventure by showing your support and taking advantage of any one of our exciting membership tiers. The Podcast in the Rough.
Now let's talk about monetizing and premium content. You just heard my ads, how to support the podcast in the rough, and buy me a coffee. And so that's a way you can get access to premium content, show your support, and that's how I monetize some of this podcast, which is exciting. So I want to talk about the business side of podcasting and how you can monetize your podcast effectively. Here is some ways that you can monetize your podcast effectively that I feel are going to be really beneficial to you and easy to implement right now in 2024. First and foremost, I would seek out crowdfunding platforms like Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, and there's a slew of others. I mean, I don't even have the list in front of me, but I would say those two alone I've been effective on, and I love the platform. I think it's very easy to use. It's not hard to set up a Patreon or a Buy Me a Coffee. I personally like Buy Me a Coffee because to me, I just like the look of it, and it's something new, and a lot of people are not using it. I haven't had a lot of traction on it per se, and it might be because of it being so new, and people are like, I don't know if I want to have a transaction through this platform because I don't understand it yet. That might be the only reason why I'm not getting a lot of traction there. I've seen a flex, and then it kind of tapered off a little bit. However, on Patreon, it's very warm already, and a lot of people understand it, and so they're going to be more open to making a transaction, subscribing, getting involved in your content in that way, getting part of a tier. So that's one way to monetize your podcast. And the other way to monetize your podcast is, and listen, I'm going to say this, all these methods right here at the forefront are all methods that are not going to challenge you to jump into the rat race and have to overly perform just to get accepted into monetizing. And I'm speaking about YouTube. Right now, I don't like YouTube. I love YouTube, but I don't like YouTube. I think it's stupid what they're doing with all the restrictions you have to do just to be eligible to monetize your channel and your content in that platform. It's ridiculous. Now, I come from the earlier old school YouTube where, I wish we were grandfathered in, right? But I started a YouTube channel a long time ago. And we were in the golden age of YouTube. It's before it went to hell in a handbag, right? Like YouTube, the golden age was amazing. We can make money on our YouTube videos. It was a lot of money. We got paid really well. we had so many opportunities. And then YouTube decided to get greedy, in my opinion. And they favored the advertisers. And they said, this is going to be a business model. And you saw the crash of YouTube. It destroyed it. It's still not out of the woods. And now that it came back and they think this new method is going to be a thing, it's not. It sucks. So don't go the YouTube route and have to work your butt off just to be eligible. If anything that says, hey, you have to be eligible if you do this, like here's the criteria. If you do this, we'll allow you. Don't even worry about it. Don't even play their game. Don't play their game. There is other ways to make money in your podcast. And that is by contributing and creating an experience and making your podcast stand out by adding massive value, or creating that experience, I should say. And then when they come in, you have it ready. You have your Patreon, you have Buy Me a Coffee, you have other ways. Maybe it's setting up your Square account or your Stripe account, and you're saying, hey, you can donate, or a PayPal, donate, and you're going to get premium content. It doesn't have to be what everyone else is doing. It just has to be different. It has to work. It has to be unique. If they don't know how to contribute to you and support you, they won't do it. If you went out there and said, hey, support my podcast by sharing it with others, please share it. That's a simple thing to do. But they won't share it if they don't know about it. And here's the other thing. You could get them to share without talking about it if it's that good. So you can get people to donate to your podcast. You can get your listeners to really support you and your community to support you if you take the time to really nurture that. Give them value. Give them a reason to donate. Some people just want to support you, and that's amazing. That's why on Buy Me a Coffee, I like it, because that crowdfunding platform allows people to go, you know what? I don't really need to get anything in return. I don't need your premium content. I don't really need to access all these other tiers. I just want to support you, and I want to buy you a coffee. I want to donate 5, 10, 15, 20, $100, whatever that is, and then walk away. I want to know that I'm proud to donate. I don't need to get an incentive for that. So that option's there. But I do like to provide premium content. And so it gives me something else to thrive for and create, because I know, hey, you know what? I am asking for contribution into my podcast to support this podcast in new ways. So I want to give you value. And so I've created all these different tiers, and I'm constantly feeding it different content and trying to add the most value I can to my listeners and what they would want, what they would take advantage of and run the ball with, and make it worth their donation. I'm giving a lot on this podcast already, a lot of value. But there's even more value in my premium content. It's just a different value. It's everything that can't fit on this podcast because it has to be structured on the podcast for me. That's as a podcast host and producer, I want to structure my podcast. So all that other stuff is my premium content. So that is how you're going to monetize that. And if you're a business, listen, podcasting is already going to monetize your business, because it allows you to have long form talk about subjects, your products and services, your experience, your customer experience, all that different stuff that you can't talk about inside your business, that you don't really have the time to bring up with a customer. But you can address all of these issues and challenges and share your hero's journey and your growth with your audience, with those customers that become your community. And that's going to drive them to go back and invest more into your products and services and your business. If you're a business and you haven't started talking about your services, or you're a business and you haven't even started a podcast, don't wait, don't hesitate, just do. Just jump into this and start talking about everything about your business, your services. And now listen, don't go into your podcast selling all the time either. This isn't like, hey, I got this product and you buy this for this. No. You're going to maybe talk about how this product came about, how you found it, or what made you want to bring that into your business, and what was the setup like, and what was the process like, or what happens when it's out of stock? What are some of the loopholes you have to go through? Some of the challenges you face, or what are your favorite things to talk about why you do this? What is your customer value? Maybe highlight a customer, maybe run prizes or giveaways, or just appreciation for your staff, right? Like you have 10 members on your team, talk about it. So-and-so here did an incredible job this week, and we just want to highlight them. Give them a round of applause, right? Comment below. There's so many ways, but don't go to your podcast if you're a business and think you're going to sell all the time. That's going to kill your audience real quick. Now, I want to jump into the listeners' Q&A. In this segment, I'm going to be answering questions submitted by our listeners. I've got some really good ones here, so keep them coming. And if you want to ask your question, you can just simply DM me on Instagram, or the best way is to go to thepodcastonrough.com, and you'll see a little icon at the bottom right somewhere on the screen that you can actually submit a voice question. Ask me a question, and if it's cool, I'll bring it in on the show. You can actually hear your voice on the show. That might be something cool. So check that out. All right, first question. How do you deal with burnout and stay consistent with podcasting? Well, that's a good one. Listen, you're not going to experience burnout if you are passionate about your podcast. If this thing lights you up and you're so excited about it. When you first start podcasting, you're going to be excited, but you're going to quickly realize that you've overcomplicated some things or you overthought some things and you've created a whole bunch of work for yourself. So that's why I encourage you to be a part of my community, because I'm going to help you avoid those pitfalls. But how to avoid the burnout when you're going doom. This is something that I've learned to deal with over the years. And even though you're going to be passionate about your podcast, at some point in time, you might run into burnout. It's inevitable, okay? I do say if you're passionate about it and it lights you up, you're not going to experience burnout because you love what you do, and that's exciting. But here's where the burnout actually happens. When it comes to podcasting, if you are passionate about what you do and you've not overly complicated stuff, the burnout happens from having so much other stuff going on around your life, and it's pulling you and pushing you around, and you know that no matter what goes on in your week, you got to deliver this episode. It's not a got to, it's a get to, I should say. You get to do this episode. And you're like, oh man, all I want to do is get to my microphone and speak about what's going on or share what I've learned or share what I want to put together on the podcast. Like, you're so excited about that. And so when you come to that, the burnout happens from all the other things that happen around you. And so here's how you beat that. You find ways to make your podcast streamlined and easier and more efficient and effective. And so, for instance, today's podcast, I'm recording it live. And I don't mean like live on a live stream, just live into the board, meaning very minimum, if not any editing is going to happen to this episode. I've already installed and preloaded all my intro and everything I've talked about in the last episode I just did. But basically all the intros, outros, and promo ads is all right there. Everything's dialed in. So I can literally, once I'm done with this episode, I could take this and then I can upload it right to my platform. I don't have to mix and master it. It's already done inside the board as best I could, right? Like I like to over mix and master and add EQs and make my quality even better, but I'm gonna time crunch this past couple weeks. I'm gonna sprint. And I personally don't have a lot of time to spend on my podcast as much as I want to, but it's got to be done because I want to do this. I cannot let my listeners down. And I want to add value at the same time. So I spend a little bit of time on what I want to write my script about and like get it all together so I could stay on point and allow room for me to go off script per se. But the editing is where you're going to be burnout. All the other stuff is just streamlined. I know once I upload it, all I have to do is make a few, calculated, dialed in social media shares, and boom, that thing's scheduled and ready to go. So that's how you compete with burnout. And if you start to feel like you're burnout, by all means, step away from it. Step away from it from a couple days, maybe even take a break for a week, but don't sit too long. Don't let it mess up your schedule either. But maybe you need to put it down. If you're feeling burnout, the question is why? Maybe you just got some untapped energy you need to let out. Maybe you need to go for a walk, a run, an exercise, get a good sweat in, talk to somebody, take a cold shower. I don't know. But the burnout is only going to happen if you're doing something that does not align to your vision and your purpose. And if you really dial that in this year, your alignment to your higher self, your purpose, and what you're adding value in, if it lights you up, it's not going to burn you out. If anything, you're going to burn out everything you touch in the path of trying to get that out there. It's going to be amazing. Let's go to the next question. What are the best practices for remote podcast collaborations? Okay, best practices? Well, I will say this. Get yourself a Zoom PodTrack P4 and then grab a microphone, plug it in, and take that on the go with you. Streamline and make that, traveling experience effective by, doing remote podcasting from somewhere else other than your home or wherever you have your podcast studio at. Go out there and get at it. I think it's really fun and exciting to do that. And when you do that, you're going to have spontaneity. It's going to be an environment change. It's going to really just create a different vibe from each episode. And you want to do that with quality. And so that's why I highly recommend the Zoom PodTrack P4 because the quality is going to be consistent and you can travel on the go with it. And just find something equivalent to that if you don't want to get that. But I'm saying that's what I recommend. And I highly recommend if you're on the go and you're doing remote podcasting and you're collaborating with other people, you don't know what the environment looks like. You don't know, what to expect from the delivery of the voice of the individual you might be partnering with, or maybe it's more than one person. So I recommend getting the Shure SM58. That microphone alone is going to really help you on the go. It's going to handle a lot and it's going to take a beating. So the Shure SM58. I've talked about this before, but I recommend that. If I've answered your question correctly, and that's what you were talking about for practices for remote podcasting, that's kind of where I went with it. Hopefully it helped. All right. Next question is, do you have tips for engaging with your audience and building a loyal community? Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, first of all, always add massive value. But you want to engage with your audience, and this is how you do that. You encourage people to comment under the podcast or in the groups or wherever you post this episode up. Maybe it's on YouTube. You encourage that. And as soon as somebody comments, you're on top of that. And you don't just have a blatant response. This is why I really don't like ChatGPT plugs. People have these ChatGPT plugins to auto-respond to people. I don't care how good it is. I want to talk. I want to know that the host is actually talking to me. That's exciting. So whether it's you or your team or a dedicated admin, make sure you have someone really good to this, answering those questions or talking to them or thanking the audience and engaging in them. And if you do that, you're going to make your audience feel more welcome and appreciate it in your community. And they are. And if you're not getting the comments like you want, then just addressing that in all your episodes, just saying, hey, I just want to thank my audience here. And if you know who some of them audience members are, maybe they've made themselves known in a group or something, just say, hey, I want to thank this person. I can't wait to get to know you. I appreciate your support. And the other thing you want to do to build a loyal community, honestly, is just basically showing up. When you show up every day, you might have 20, 30 members in a Facebook group or in your community or in the chats that are not responsive, but they see you. So you showing up every day and you got to win them over. You got to practice. Try something new, win them over. It's kind of like, hey, check this out. I got some fruit. Now you guys don't like fruit? All right, I got some better fruit. Now you like that? Now I'm juggling the fruit. You see this? I'm juggling the fruit. Check this out. You know what I'm saying? Like you're entertaining them. And then create an experience by maybe dropping some of the fruit on your head and making a mess. Oh, man. And then laughing it off. Or being vulnerable and showing them how, maybe you're not perfect. Of course we're not perfect. But like what they think you're so perfect, you're not perfect. And open the doors on that and say, hey, listen, I mess up a lot of times on my podcast. And this is how I edit that. I cut all this crap out. And I do that. I'm speaking from experience. I cut all this crap out if I'm not going live like today because I really want to make sure I nail this. And I'm like hoping that I don't mess up or slur my speech, because I'm going to go back and edit that out or have an we're not doing that. Okay, so, but you share that and they go, wow, that person's human like me. And then they want to communicate, and that's going to get you to be more engaged with the community and build that loyal community. So I hope that answered your question. All right, this wraps up this episode, and I want to quickly recap what I've covered today. Today, we've discussed the current state of podcasting, strategies for growth, monetization, and I've answered some of your burning questions. So if you found value in today's episode, I encourage you to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcast. I'm really trying to get that out there more. So I appreciate the help with that. Or share it. Share this podcast with somebody. And remember, the conversation doesn't end here. I'm active in my Facebook groups, on my pages, on my profiles, in the chats. Anything underneath this YouTube video that you're watching, or if you're listening to this on Apple Podcast or any of that, I'm there. I would love to continue the conversation, so check that out. And if you need help with podcasting, go ahead and join my podcast community mastermind group for more support. And if you'd like to show some support and contribute by getting access to premium content, go to the buymeacoffee.com/in-the-rough and check that out. So there you have it. Another great episode of the Podcast on the Rough. I really appreciate all of you. Until next time, take care. Enjoy your weekend. the podcast in the rough.